Behind the gilded walls of Windsor Castle, as twilight settled over an empire built on centuries of silence, Queen Elizabeth II summoned Catherine for a final private audience. No aides, no press, no record, just a monarch nearing the end and a future queen standing at the threshold of destiny. What passed between them that night was never meant to surface, until now. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The air inside the ancient residence felt heavier than usual, thick with the unspoken knowledge that history was quietly shifting. Catherine entered not as the composed public figure the world adored, but as a woman acutely aware that this invitation was unprecedented. Private audiences with the Queen were rare. A final, secluded summons was something else entirely. It carried the weight of inheritance without the ceremony. She understood that whatever was about to be said would not be repeated, would not be recorded, and would not be shared lightly. The monarchy had always survived on discretion, but this felt deeper, more personal, more urgent. The Queen, though visibly fragile, radiated an authority that illness could not diminish. Her voice may have softened with age, but it retained that unmistakable precision, the kind that shaped decades of prime ministers and crises. She did not waste words, she did not indulge in sentiment. Instead, she spoke with deliberate care, as though placing pieces on a chessboard only she could fully see. Trusted staff had been dismissed early, doors secured. Even the rhythm of the household seemed altered to accommodate this moment. This was not grandmotherly advice, it was sovereign counsel. Then came the name that subtly changed the temperature in the room. Camilla, not casually mentioned, not in passing, but positioned at the center of what the Queen described as the institution's future balance. Catherine felt it instantly, the tension beneath the civility. Why would Camilla's role require confidential guidance at such a pivotal hour? The Queen's expression did not betray doubt, yet her phrasing carried layers. Protect the institution, she urged quietly. Guard the heart of the crown. These were not abstract ideals. They were warnings wrapped in loyalty. Catherine listened without interruption, absorbing not only the words, but the pauses between them. The Queen spoke of unity in public and vigilance in private, of perception as power, of restraint as strength. She hinted at storms that do not announce themselves until it is too late. Camilla's position, she implied, would evolve, and with evolution comes friction. There was no accusation in her tone, no overt distrust, only the steady insistence that balance must be preserved, no matter the personal cost. And in that moment, Catherine realized she was not simply receiving advice. She was being entrusted with an assignment. This was about far more than appearances on balconies or coordinated engagements. It was about influence, quiet, strategic, enduring influence. It was about understanding that popularity can shift power just as effectively as a title. It was about ensuring that when the crown transitioned fully into a new era, it would not fracture under competing visions of loyalty and legacy. As Catherine rose to leave, the magnitude of the exchange settled into her bones. She carried no document in her hands, yet the instructions felt etched into memory with permanent ink. The Queen had not expressed fear, she had expressed foresight. And foresight in the monarchy is everything. But to understand why Camilla's name cast such a long shadow over that quiet room, we must rewind to a rivalry that never truly disappeared. For decades, the monarchy projected unity, smiles on balconies, carefully choreographed appearances. Yet beneath the tiaras and tailored coats lay a silent tension, one forged in heartbreak, public scrutiny, and a love story that once shook the throne. Catherine walked into a royal family, still haunted by emotional fault lines, and Camilla stood at the center of them. The public had been asked to forgive, to forget, to accept that time heals even the deepest royal wounds. Camilla's journey from controversy to coronation had not been accidental. It had been carefully managed, strategically paced, and relentlessly disciplined. Every appearance, every speech, every carefully measured expression was part of a long rehabilitation. The monarchy knew it had to protect its future, and that meant reshaping a narrative that once threatened to fracture it. Camilla endured criticism that would have broken many. She survived headlines that refused to fade. Over time, resilience became her armor. Then Catherine arrived, poised, luminous, seemingly untouched by scandal. Where Camilla carried the weight of history, Catherine embodied renewal. She represented continuity without controversy, elegance without baggage. The public responded instantly. Crowds swelled, approval ratings soared. Commentators whispered that she was the monarchy's most valuable asset in generations. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but a shift began to take place. Affection, once cautiously redistributed, now flowed overwhelmingly toward the young princess. And affection, in a constitutional monarchy, is a currency more powerful than decree. Inside palace walls, conversations grew more nuanced. There were whispers about influence corridors, about who truly held the king's ear in moments of uncertainty. Camilla had earned her place through loyalty and patience. She understood the king's instincts, his vulnerabilities, his long-held frustrations. But Catherine's influence was different. It was indirect yet potent, through William, through the future, through the undeniable fact that she represented what came next. That distinction mattered. The generational contrast sharpened the tension. Camilla was the survivor of scandal, forged by adversity and hardened by decades of scrutiny. Catherine was the embodiment of stability, raised in a world far removed from royal turmoil and stepping into her role with seamless grace. One woman carried the monarchy's scars. The other carried its promise. The public narrative began framing them in opposing lights. Camilla as the complicated past finally legitimized, Catherine as the radiant future, already embraced. And at the center of it all stood Queen Elizabeth II, the master of equilibrium. She supported Camilla publicly, ensuring the transition to Queen Consort would be accepted without hesitation. Yet privately, she understood that popularity could reshape power dynamics in unpredictable ways. She had spent a lifetime maintaining balance, smoothing rivalries before they erupted, steering the institution away from internal fractures. She recognized patterns others missed. She sensed undercurrents before they became storms. Media commentary intensified the contrast. Headlines celebrated Catherine's modern touch while revisiting Camilla's turbulent history. Even when unintended, comparisons were constant. Two women, two eras, two visions of royal femininity. The monarchy insisted there was harmony, and perhaps there was on the surface. But beneath that surface lay a fragile equilibrium, one dependent on restraint, perception, and the careful management of ego. The Queen understood that institutions rarely collapse from external pressure alone. More often, they weaken from within through rivalry, miscalculation, or wounded pride. She had seen enough to know that admiration can shift influence just as swiftly as controversy once did. And as Catherine's star continued to rise, the possibility of diverging visions for the monarchy's future became impossible to ignore. And it was precisely this fragile equilibrium that prompted the Queen to put her deepest concerns into words. Words Catherine would never forget. What if the Queen's final counsel wasn't sentimental, but strategic? What if, behind closed doors, she handed Catherine not comfort, but a carefully crafted blueprint, one designed to safeguard the monarchy from internal fractures? The instructions were not about titles or jewels. They were about influence, restraint, and the silent art of outlasting power. As Catherine replayed that private exchange in her mind, the emotional weight began to sharpen into something more deliberate. The Queen had not dwelled on nostalgia. She had not offered reassurances about destiny or spoken softly about tradition. Instead, her words were measured, almost surgical. Discretion over confrontation, always. In an institution built on perception, visible conflict was poison. Never correct in anger, the Queen had warned in essence. Never respond in haste. Catherine understood that this was more than etiquette, it was survival. There had been a directive woven into the council, clear yet understated. Observe before acting, watch the room, read the silence, understand the motives behind smiles. The Queen knew that emotion, however justified, could be weaponized in royal life. Reacting impulsively would only empower those who thrived on division. Catherine was urged to absorb, to assess, to move only when the timing strengthened the institution rather than herself. It was a lesson in controlled power, in mastering the art of strategic stillness. But the guidance did not stop at restraint. The Queen spoke of alliances, not loud alliances announced in headlines, but quiet networks of trust cultivated over time. Relationships with palace staff, bonds with advisors, respect earned among charity leaders and Commonwealth figures. These were the invisible threads that held influence together. Catherine was encouraged to build slowly, sincerely, without spectacle. Influence, the Queen implied, should feel organic, never orchestrated. When people trust you instinctively, power flows without resistance. There was also an unspoken urgency when the conversation turned to William. The monarchy's future king could not afford to be caught in emotional crosscurrents. Protect him from political undertows, the Queen suggested, even if those undertows originate within the family itself. Shield his judgment from unnecessary tension. Ensure his path remains steady, not clouded by rivalry or resentment. Catherine's role was not merely supportive, it was stabilizing. If William wavered, the entire structure would tremble. And then came the subtle caution that lingered long after the meeting ended. Never underestimate Camilla. Not her resilience, not her patience, not her strategic instincts forged through decades of adversity. Camilla had survived storms that might have ended others. She understood how to endure criticism, how to wait for the tide to turn. The Queen did not frame this as a threat, but as a fact. To ignore Camilla's strength would be naive. To confront it directly would be reckless. Public unity, the Queen insisted, must remain untouched. Even if private tensions simmered beneath polished appearances, the facade of cohesion could never crack. The monarchy thrived on stability, on the illusion that all internal complexities were harmonized. Catherine was reminded that her popularity, powerful as it was, must never resemble ambition. Admiration can inspire loyalty, but if it appears as a bid for dominance, it breeds resistance. Humility was not just virtue, it was strategy. As the implications settled, Catherine began to see the shape of her own strength. It was not in dramatic gestures or public assertions. It was in patience, in consistency, in the ability to endure without announcing endurance. The Queen had not handed her a crown. She had handed her a discipline. A long game measured in decades, not days. Yet even as Catherine absorbed these instructions, a deeper question lingered. What exactly was the Queen preparing her for? It wasn't until weeks later, during a public engagement thick with polite smiles and carefully rehearsed gestures, that Catherine felt it the undercurrent. A glance held too long, a comment layered with meaning. The monarchy was not merely evolving, it was recalibrating, and Catherine suddenly understood. The Queen had foreseen this moment. The event itself seemed ordinary to the outside world, another appearance, another display of solidarity. Yet beneath the formal greetings and composed exchanges, there was a shift in rhythm. Camilla moved with unmistakable assurance, her voice steady, her presence firm, subtly commanding the room without ever appearing to demand it. It was not dominance in the obvious sense. It was confidence rooted in entitlement to her position. Catherine noticed the nuances. Who stepped forward first, whose words carried finality, whose laughter lingered just a second longer in the air. These were small details, almost invisible to the public, but within royal life, such details shape perception. Inside, Catherine felt the tension between reverence and responsibility. She respected Camilla's journey, understood the endurance it required. But respect did not erase awareness. The Queen's warnings echoed in her memory: observe before acting, protect the institution, never allow admiration to resemble ambition. Catherine's popularity had grown steadily, almost effortlessly. She had never chased it, yet it followed her. Now she saw how easily that admiration could be interpreted as influence, and influence, unchecked, can unsettle even the most carefully constructed hierarchy. Meanwhile, speculation outside palace walls intensified body language, analyzed, seating arrangements, measured applause. Headlines hinted at shifting dynamics and emerging leadership. Though no open conflict existed, the narrative of comparison was relentless. Catherine as the modernizer, Camilla as the seasoned matriarch, the future and the present occupying the same frame. Catherine understood that perception often becomes reality long before truth catches up. Camilla, for her part, projected seamless diplomacy. She spoke with assurance, aligning herself publicly with continuity and stability. Her gestures suggested unity. Her tone conveyed calm authority, but beneath that composure lay decades of hard-earned resilience. She had waited for legitimacy. She had endured public doubt. Now, secure in her role, she was not about to relinquish influence to sentiment or popularity. Catherine recognized that strength. It demanded caution, not confrontation. William stood beside her, unwavering but thoughtful. His loyalty to his father and stepmother was clear, yet so was his instinct to protect his wife from unnecessary scrutiny. Catherine sensed the delicate balancing act he carried. If tension ever surfaced openly, it would not merely be personal, it would ripple outward, affecting the perception of the future king. The stakes were far larger than any fleeting discomfort. In that moment, Catherine realized something profound. Legacy is not inherited simply through marriage or title. It is defended quietly, through discipline and endurance. The Queen had prepared her not for dramatic clashes, but for subtle recalibrations. This was not a battle fought with words. It was one navigated through restraint. Catherine chose composure. She chose stillness over reaction, knowing that a single misstep could validate every whisper of rivalry. Yet as she maintained her calm exterior, she sensed that this was only the beginning. The recalibration had begun, led but undeniable. And while she could master her own response, she could not control the rising expectations swirling beyond palace walls. But composure alone would not be enough as private strategy began to collide with public expectation. As the crown shifted and history turned a page, Camilla stepped forward with renewed authority, no longer defined by controversy. She embraced her role with deliberate confidence. Yet every calculated move, every speech, every initiative sent ripples through the palace. Was this harmony, or was it a quiet consolidation of power? In the months that followed the Queen's passing, Camilla's presence expanded in ways that could not be ignored. Invitations multiplied, patronages deepened. Causes once quietly supported became centerpieces of her public identity. She did not appear triumphant. She appeared purposeful. There was a difference. Each engagement seemed carefully selected, reinforcing her image as steady, compassionate, and indispensable to the king's reign. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. The woman once tolerated was now central. The king's trust in her was visible in small but telling ways. She stood beside him not merely as consort, but as confidant. Observers noted how often he sought her glance before answering delicate questions, how frequently her counsel shaped the tone of official statements. It was not theatrical, it was habitual. Years of partnership had forged a private understanding that now extended into public governance. For supporters, this was proof of loyalty rewarded. For skeptics, it raised a different question. Where did influence end and authority begin? Within palace corridors, perspectives began to diverge. Traditionalists favored continuity, believing that Camilla's elevation represented hard-won stability after decades of turbulence. Modernists, however, quietly argued that the monarch's future depended more heavily on William and Catherine's appeal. Two visions, two strategies, neither openly acknowledged, yet both unmistakably present. The institution had always relied on balance, but balance requires careful distribution of visibility and power. Catherine watched without signaling alarm. She remembered the Queen's directive with unwavering clarity: never compete, endure. The temptation to assert herself, to lean into her overwhelming public support, must have been real. Crowds still gravitated toward her. Polls still favored her, yet she resisted the impulse to outshine. Instead, she refined her focus on long-term initiatives, investing deeply in causes that aligned with her identity rather than chasing prominence. It was a strategic stillness, not passivity. Still, the contrast between the two women intensified in public discourse. Camilla projected seasoned authority. Catherine embodied aspirational modernity. Articles compared speeches. Commentators speculated about influence. Even gestures became symbolic. A smile interpreted as solidarity by some was read as rivalry by others, and beneath it all, the subtle competition for public affection simmered, not because either woman declared it, but because the world insisted on measuring them against one another. The monarchy now walked a tightrope between two powerful presences. one anchored in loyalty to the present king, the other intertwined with the future sovereign. Camilla's strength lay in experience and earned resilience. Catherine's power lay in instinctive connection and generational promise. The institution needed both, yet it could not afford visible friction between them. Every move had to appear harmonious, even if strategic calculations were unfolding behind closed doors. For Catherine, the challenge was not simply maintaining composure, it was mastering timing. She understood that power often reveals itself not in assertion, but in patience. The Queen's voice echoed relentlessly in her thoughts. Popularity must never resemble ambition. Unity must remain unbroken. She endured comparisons without comment, speculation without defense. And in doing so, she preserved something far more valuable than headlines. She preserved leverage. But stability in royal life is rarely permanent. Just when the balance seemed carefully managed, just when both women appeared to have found their rhythm within the evolving hierarchy, something unexpected surfaced. Something that would cast earlier conversations in an entirely new light. And just as the balance seemed manageable, a revelation threatened to redefine everything Catherine believed she understood. Months after that private meeting, a sealed envelope bearing the Queen's unmistakable hand was delivered to Catherine. It had been locked away, timed for release, only after certain events unfolded. Inside was not merely reassurance, but clarification, one final piece of guidance that reframed the entire strategy. When Catherine first held it, the weight felt disproportionate to its size. The handwriting alone carried history, authority, and finality. This was not ceremonial correspondence. It was deliberate. The Queen had anticipated that spoken words might fade under pressure, that memory might blur when tested by shifting loyalties. So she had written, not extensively, but precisely, every sentence carved with intention. As Catherine read, one truth became unmistakable. Their earlier conversation had been only the foundation. The letter confirmed that the Queen had foreseen a sequence of events, an expansion of influence, a recalibration of hierarchy, a subtle reshaping of public allegiance. Nothing overt, nothing scandalous, but enough to test resolve. The Queen had not doubted Camilla's dedication. She had doubted the stability of perception when power adjusts its balance. That distinction changed everything. There was a line that lingered longer than the rest, almost prophetic in tone. A warning about storms that test loyalty without announcing themselves. Catherine understood instantly. These would not be crises that explode in headlines. They would be moments of quiet pressure, private disagreements, strategic positioning, the temptation to assert control when restraint feels unbearable. The Queen was not predicting betrayal. She was acknowledging human nature under strain. Another reminder echoed clearly. Unity must always appear unbroken. Appear. The word was intentional. The monarchy, the Queen insisted, survives not because it lacks complexity, but because it masters presentation. Catherine was urged to guard that illusion fiercely. No public hesitation, no visible discord. The institution's strength depends on perception of cohesion, even when private discussions grow intense. This was not about pretending harmony existed naturally. It was about protecting the symbol at all costs. Perhaps most striking was the confidence woven throughout the letter. The Queen expressed unwavering belief in Catherine's emotional intelligence. She praised her instinct for timing, her ability to read rooms without demanding attention. That affirmation was not sentimental. It was empowering. The Queen was entrusting her not merely with patience, but with judgment, a sovereign's endorsement, written plainly, without flourish. The guidance then turned toward the future in its purest form, the children. George, Charlotte, Louis. The next generation was not to be shielded from responsibility, but shaped carefully within it. Catherine was reminded that her greatest legacy would not be measured in popularity, but in the steadiness with which she prepared them for scrutiny and expectation. Protect their innocence, yes, but also cultivate resilience. The storms that test loyalty would not spare them forever, and woven through every paragraph was one unwavering emphasis. Safeguard William's reign before it even begins. Protect his clarity, shield his focus. Ensure that when the time comes, he inherits not only a crown, but a stable foundation unmarred by unresolved tension. Catherine's role extended beyond partnership. She was to be the anchor, the unseen architect of continuity. As the final lines settled into her thoughts, Catherine felt the magnitude of her responsibility expand. This was no longer about navigating personal discomfort or public comparison. It was about stewardship, about understanding that emotion must bow to endurance when legacy is at stake. The Queen had not asked her to confront, she had asked her to outlast. The envelope contained no dramatic revelation, no accusation. Instead, it offered clarity. Clarity that her path would demand sacrifice, silence, and strategic compassion. With the Queen's words echoing louder than ever, Catherine faced the defining choice of her royal life. Power in the monarchy rarely announces itself. It is felt in consistency, in grace, in endurance. Catherine chose not to confront, not to challenge, but to build. Slowly, deliberately, she began shaping her own sphere of influence, guided by the Queen's final counsel and driven by an unshakable vision for the crown's future. Rather than reacting to speculation or leaning into comparison, she narrowed her focus. Mental health, early childhood, long-term social stability. These were not glamorous battlegrounds for influence, but they were strategic foundations for legacy. Catherine invested deeply, speaking not with grand declarations, but with quiet conviction. She aligned herself with experts, educators, and advocates, embedding her work in substance rather than citator. The public saw compassion. Insiders recognized architecture. She was not chasing headlines. She was constructing credibility that could not easily be dismissed or rivaled. Beyond domestic initiatives, she extended her reach carefully across the Commonwealth. Meetings were purposeful, conversations measured. She listened more than she spoke. That restraint earned trust. Leaders who valued continuity saw in her a future sovereign partner who understood nuance and respect. Influence was growing, but organically, without force. The Queen's lesson echoed constantly. Popularity must never resemble ambition. So Catherine allowed admiration to settle naturally, unclaimed and unexploited. Public loyalty strengthened not because she demanded it, but because she remained authentic. She spoke openly about the challenges of parenting within extraordinary circumstances. She acknowledged pressure without dramatizing it. That balance humanized the crown. The monarchy, often perceived as distant, felt relatable through her steadiness. In doing so, she achieved something profound. She made resilience look effortless, and that illusion of ease masked the discipline beneath it. Perhaps most strategic of all was her visible support of Camilla. Every joint appearance was handled with deliberate warmth. Every public remark reinforced unity. Catherine understood that rumors feed on absence, on perceived frostiness, on the smallest misstep. So she denied speculation oxygen. By honoring Camilla openly, she neutralized narratives of rivalry. It was not submission, it was calculation. The Queen had warned her that visible competition would fracture the institution. Catherine chose instead to elevate cohesion, even if it required personal restraint. Behind the scenes, her preparation of William intensified. Conversations deepened, perspectives broadened. She encouraged clarity, composure, and strategic patience in him as well. William would one day carry the full weight of the crown, and Catherine ensured he would inherit not turbulum, but equilibrium. Their partnership became more synchronized, less reactive. They studied not only policy but perception. They anticipated shifts before they surfaced. Together, they cultivated steadiness that felt unshakable. Balancing motherhood with monarchy became another silent triumph. She refused to allow the institution to overshadow her children's upbringing. Instead, she blended responsibility with warmth, presenting a model of leadership rooted in empathy. The public saw a mother first, a future queen second. That inversion was powerful. It softened the monarchy's edges and strengthened its relevance in a modern world skeptical of inherited power. Influence, for Catherine, was never about authority. It was about connection, about showing up consistently, speaking thoughtfully, and enduring without complaint. Each decision reflected discipline. Each gesture reinforced strategy. She had turned patience into leverage, restraint into advantage, and while others debated hierarchy, she invested in longevity. Gradually, the contrast between immediate power and enduring impact became undeniable. Camilla held position, Catherine cultivated future legitimacy. Neither clashed openly, yet the distinction sharpened. Catherine was not rushing the tide, she was aligning with it, and as the monarchy entered its next chapter, the results of that silent strategy began to surface in ways no one could ignore. Years from now, historians may look back at this era and see only ceremonial photographs and diplomatic tours, but beneath the polished surface was a chess game of legacy, restraint and foresight. The Queen's final instructions were never about rivalry, they were about preservation, and Catherine, standing at the crossroads of history, chose to honor that mission. What unfolded in the years that followed was not dramatic upheaval, but something far more powerful: stability. The monarchy, once whispered about in tones of uncertainty, began to feel anchored again. Public appearances projected cohesion, statements carried consistency. There were no visible fractures, no headline-grabbing disputes. To the casual observer, harmony seemed effortless. But those who understood the deeper currents knew that such equilibrium does not happen by chance. It is crafted, protected, guarded fiercely behind composed expressions. Camilla settled into her role with dignity, no longer shadowed by the controversies that once defined her narrative. Respect replaced resistance. Time, patience, and relentless perseverance had reshaped her public image. She was acknowledged not as an intruder to history, but as part of it. And yet, alongside that respect, something else quietly flourished. Catherine's connection with the public deepened into something almost instinctive. Crowds responded not merely with admiration, but with trust. She did not overshadow, she illuminated. That distinction mattered. William, too, transformed before the nation's eyes. The uncertainty that sometimes accompanies transition gave way to quiet assurance. He spoke with measured clarity, he stood with grounded composure. The partnership between him and Catherine appeared synchronized, deliberate, unshakable. It became evident that preparation had been unfolding long before the crown would ever rest upon his head. The Queen's emphasis on safeguarding his future reign had not been abstract advice, it had been a blueprint for continuity. And then there was the next generation. George, Charlotte, and Louis symbolized something timeless, the unbroken thread of succession. They were not shields from scrutiny, nor were they thrust recklessly into its glare. Instead, they represented balanced visibility tempered with protection. Through them, the monarchy felt less like an institution trapped in ritual, and more like a living narrative evolving carefully with each passing year. Catherine understood that shaping their foundation was shaping the crown's horizon. As speculation gradually faded, admiration took its place. Media narratives shifted from questioning dynamics to praising steadiness. Analysts who once dissected imagined tensions began acknowledging the discipline behind the scenes. The contrast between suffering and success became clearer in retrospect. The pressures had been immense, the comparisons relentless, yet the response had been composed rather than combative. And in that restraint, strength revealed itself. The Queen's foresight proved remarkably precise. She had anticipated not scandal, but subtle imbalance. She had understood that in a modern monarchy, influence flows through perception as much as position. By entrusting Catherine with strategic patience rather than confrontation, she ensured that rivalry never eclipsed responsibility. It was not about elevating one woman above another. It was about preserving equilibrium in a system that depends on it. The ultimate revelation was simple yet profound. The Queen chose Catherine not because she was the most popular, nor because she was the youngest, but because she understood balance. She knew when to step forward and when to step back. She grasped that endurance outlasts applause. That unity, even when imperfect, must be protected as sacred. That legacy is secured not through dominance, but through discipline. In the grand sweep of history, personalities will inevitably fade, headlines will be archived, debates will lose urgency, but the crown, if guarded wisely, will endure. And that endurance rests not on spectacle, but on the quiet decisions, in private moments of clarity. In the end, the secret was never about undermining Camilla, it was about ensuring that, long after personalities fade, the crown itself endures. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.